Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of MoCo's Most Famous. I'm Joe Yasharoff, Director of Content for Montgomery Community Media in Rockville. Today's special guest is one of the most recognizable sportscasters in the business. He's been with ESPN for over 20 years, reporting, anchoring Sports Center, and his own show. He's covered the Masters for many years, recently took over hosting duties for Monday Night Countdown. He's the pride of Brookville, Maryland, Sherwood High School, and of course, the University of Maryland. Scott Van Pelt, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm a big deal, Joe. I hope you feel really honored to be sitting with me.
Well, I am. I do feel honored sitting with you, and you made MoCo's Most Famous. So, I mean, does it get better or bigger than that?
No. I mean, it just clearly that I'm going to make sure that my family understands how to refer to me from this point on. Moving on, I'll be Dad. No, I am MoCo's Most Famous. Act accordingly. Bring me a chilled beverage immediately.
Growing up in Montgomery County, kind of a cliched Barbara Walters question, but growing up in Montgomery County, were you thinking you're going to be in the Montgomery County Sports Hall of Fame?
Pretty sure, Joe. Pretty sure it was going to happen. Figured it would be for my exploits either on the diamond or on the basketball court. I was sure when I was a young Montgomery County resident that was absolutely in the offing. And then it probably became evident not too long after that that was not in the cards. Of course not. Of course, none of this was possible. I mean, it seems, look, Joe, when I met you, this didn't seem possible. Okay. I was an intern that showed up in a suit, and our buddy that we worked with at Channel 5 told me never to show up in a suit again. If I could fog a mirror, I was qualified to be an intern. And you guys and my guy Steve Buckheads at Channel 5 helped. But I mean, of course, none of this seemed possible. No.
So what does it mean to you? I mean, you've won awards, you've received accolades and honors, all kinds of stuff. But this particular one, I'm not going to ask you to rank it, but what does it mean to you?
I often say that we're all from somewhere, and I'm from here. And I make that no great secret. In fact, there have been times in my career where I was discouraged, almost scolded for making it clear where I was from. And I made it clear to them that I didn't care. I didn't sign a Hippocratic oath to do this. And I refused to not let my fandom be evident. And I enjoy pointing out from time to time that the people that tried to discourage me aren't in the roles that they were in when they were trying to tell me how I wouldn't be taken seriously as a journalist. I told this story at a different function, that the guy that told me, do you want to be taken seriously as a journalist? And I'm like, well, do you think I'm not? And I mean, it's 20 some odd years later, and I've been nominated for an Emmy for my hosting on, I think, 7 times. So apparently someone thinks I can do it. So those are cool honors. But to be recognized by the place where you're from, and to be deemed worthy of this kind of recognition from the place where you're from, where you clearly have such pride in it, I mean, it means everything. And honestly, Joe, I do a pretty good job of not accepting compliments. It's honestly, I wish I were better at it. But if I allow myself this moment to say, you're in the Hall of Fame in the place where you're from, I mean, that's an incredible, incredible thing. And it means more than I can even process.
And you're joining the likes of Katie Ledecky, Dominique Dawes, Bob Malloy, Bruce Murray, Walter Johnson, the great baseball pitcher who lived in Montgomery County for many years. So does that make it even a little more heady, joining a list of those folks?
Just stop with Katie Ledecky. I mean, just say that and then just stop. I mean, not that the others aren't equally as worthy and impressive, but I mean, come on. You're talking about a woman who, when she swims, is lengths of the pool beyond other human beings that are really good at what they do. So of course but let me make it clear, in no way do I see myself as similar or on the same levels. But I think that's the beauty of something like this, is you're not saying that necessarily. You're just saying that in what you do, if I've distinguished myself in the lane that I'm in a way that's worthy, then that's great. And I do well not to compare myself to Katie Ledecky because she only stands on the top of the medal stand.
I had you at Katie Ledecky. So I may also have you at Tim Kirkjian, who last year was inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame. I know he's a good friend, and you guys have a great repartee on air. I'm sure off air too. So that must be fun for you to join Tim Kirkjian in the hall.
Without a doubt. I mean, and I mean, this is just another feather in his cap. I mean, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, which was such a cool deal for us. I mean, we have such a pride in who Tim is. And he's just so revered in his sport. And I mean, he's like me, you know, he's from here, Walter Johnson. And, you know, you get Tim talking about like, we sit around a table and talk about baseball. And no, what am I, how did I even get here? I feel this, I think we both have a similar appreciation for the good fortune that is a part of anyone's success in our business. I would say like for Katie, I mean, she didn't get lucky. She would had gifts that she worked her rear end off at to elevate. I think in our particular lines of work, the good fortune plays such a role. But I'll tell you a quick story, and I know you'll get a kick out of this because you and I go back to the days of the left-hander. I've known Lefty Driesell since I was young, and I was at a function. It's probably been 15. God, maybe it's 20 years now. I don't even know. Maybe let's call it 15. And I saw Lefty, and he said, "I'm proud of you, boy. You're doing great." And I said, "Coach, I appreciate it. I just got lucky." And Lefty said, "Son, if it was luck, it would have run out by now." And I love that line because it forces me to at least take some ownership in this, right? That I believe I got lucky. I know I got lucky, but at some point, as Lefty said, it would have run out if it was just that. You know, you have to work at it. And the beauty for Tim and myself is that, you know, the work isn't really work so much, right? I mean, we're doing what we really genuinely love, and that makes it not my dad. You know, my dad worked for a living. You know, my dad wore work boots to work. So, you know, as I've often said, I wear loafers and a little bit of makeup. So it's a different hard work, but we do work hard at it. And he's a great friend, a great example of how to do it.
Two impressions so far, Tim Kirkjian and Lefty Driesell. I'm not sure if there are any others, but I'm hoping there are more coming in this interview.
Never know.
So growing up in Montgomery County, oh, I'm sorry, you know what? I'm going to change that. So you and I, you touched on it, worked together at Channel 5 many eons ago. And clearly, you know, we knew that you had a gift, that you were going places. We didn't know where and how and all that. But so at that point in time, you're interning at Fox 5. Steve Buckhantz is a sportscaster. What were you thinking about next steps in your future and your career?
It seemed like a bridge too far because I wasn't certain how I'd get there because you know, the internship was more checking a box. I mean, I did not have a distinguished academic career at the University of Maryland. As I'm fond of saying, I couldn't get into the journalism school. And now they have me on their board, which I find rather humorous. I'm happy to be, and if I can be an asset to the students, to try to be an example of, look, this bozo made it, you know, I mean, you're way ahead of him. But I didn't know that there would be any kind of path. And that's where the luck comes in, because one of our coworkers left to be part of the group that started the Golf Channel, and was several years later. And there were some rocky years there in the middle, because, I mean, you know what it's like, Joe. Like, if you want to make it in the business, you got to put a tape together and send it to somewhere and go there to try to make it. And I wasn't that I felt like I was above it by any stretch. I just wasn't. Mentally in that time of my life, I couldn't have imagined leaving here, home, to go someplace else to try to make it on television. So when the Golf Channel opportunity came up, which was '94, it was the thing I had to do. And to be clear, when I went down there, it was not to go be on television. I went down there to be in production. And then a series of kind of ridiculous things happened, and they gave me some opportunities. And then I met this young guy named Tiger Woods, who was a solid little prospect. from Stanford, and then he became who he became, and I was kind of along for the ride. But it was, you know, this is when you ask, like, do I feel lucky, or did I think this was going to happen? No, not even close. But that moment happened. There are flashpoints in life where you go left or you go right, and then the entire rest of your life is different based on that. Well, I got on 95 and drove south and went to Orlando, and that's where everything started to happen.
What did your friendship relationship with Tiger Woods do for your job, for your career, for your life?
I think I've told you this with your students at Maryland at some point, but Tiger loves to tell me, without me, there's no you. And he's right. And, you know, honestly, like he wrote a book about the 97 Masters, and he asked me to do the audio for it. And it was really neat because him winning the 97 Masters it changed the sport, and he then became this singular sort of Michael Jordan kind of figure, bigger in some ways, which sounds crazy, but I think it's true. And then he became even larger than that, and as I say, I was kind of along for the ride. And now, as he's writing this book, it was 20 years after the fact, and it really invited us. You know, we've had this really good professional friendship for the entirety of his career. And mostly it's born out of what I think a lot of guys are way more comfortable, I think, Joe, just kind of busting each other's chops and joking than they are being sincere with one another. But we had the opportunity as husbands and fathers and older people, me bald, him should be bald, but he won't cut his hair off, and I tell him he needs to, like, to talk about the time. And I just told him how grateful I am. And I said, you need to understand that my life doesn't exist without you. I mean, my job, I mean, the woman I met, who's my wife, I mean, the children that I have with my wife because I met her, because I was in sports, which I would never, I mean, it's deep, Joe. My life is because I met that guy in 1995 when he was a freshman at Stanford, and because he became what he became. And my access to him and my coverage of him got me noticed in a way that got me to ESPN. So when I say to you, you know, my life is because I met that guy, that is an accurate depiction of the events. And then there's just the kind of cool part that, God, he did some incredible things, and I was often the person sitting across from him on Sunday nights asking him about it. And I don't know, I don't want to bore you or the folks that are listening, but like a quick story. He won the Masters in 2000. I get the years. God, it's been so long, like 2002, whatever year it was at Bethpage. I think it was 2002. And he comes in and he sits down, and because we're each, you know, I can't be serious and tell him congrats on the Masters. I'm like, how you doing? And he's like, God, I'm so effing hungry. I'm like, what do you want? He's like, I'd give anything for a pizza. I go, well, okay, what do you want on it? He's like, sausage and pepperoni. I was like, all right. I said, I tell you what, you win the U.S. Open at Bethpage. When you come in and sit down, I'll have a pizza for you. Go fast forward to Bethpage. Guess who's going to win the Masters? Him. We've got a pizzeria on call to make us a pizza. And we call them and say, listen, we need you to make a sausage and pepperoni pizza. They're like, all right, what's the name? I'm like, well, it's for Tiger Woods. And this is in Bethpage, New York, Joe. The guy's like, hey, great, we'll make it for Santa Claus. All right, like you know, get out of here, right? Like, no, it's honestly, we're with ESPN. It's for him. They're like, no, you can beat me, or sorry.
No, all good.
Okay. They end up having to send like a police escort to get this pizza in, because at the end of the tournament, there's 50,000 people leaving this place. It's mayhem, and they have literally have a police escort to get this pizza to us. Tiger walks into the room, he sits down, and there on the box, there on the chair is a pizza, and he walks in, he goes, "What's that?" I go, "What do you mean, what's that?" He said, "You were hungry at Augusta. I told you we'd have a pizza." He's like, "Are you?" And he's like, his eyes light up. This guy just won the U.S. Open, and he's like the happiest, like a little kid. And we sat there and ate pizza. Now this is the best part of the story to me, is that there is a regimented schedule that is followed.
Yeah.
Tiger wins, does the press, NBC, I think it might have been Bob Costas on the green. They bring him here, they bring him there, they bring him to you because you're one of the rights holders. Then they go to the press. Well, they were supposed to come to us, but we didn't have the pizza. So I'm like, you guys can go first. We're just getting our lights set up. And I'm thinking, where's the pizza? And so by the time we get the pizza and Tiger comes in and he sits down, Tiger looks at his agent, Mark Steinberg. He's like, do we have time to eat the pizza? And his agent goes, you just won the US Open. You can do whatever you want. We shut the door. And for like 25 minutes, we're just in there eating pizza. It was the Lakers had beaten the Nets in the NBA Finals. We're talking about Kobe, and we're literally not even doing the interview. And at some point, someone's like, "I think we should probably, bang out 5 minutes." I'm like, yeah, okay. Then we talk about the U.S. Open, and he gets up. The guy from the U.S. Open wants to murder me because this very regimented schedule was just totally thrown out the window. But my guy needed a pizza, so we got him a pizza. But to me, those serious things I said to you about how my life is because of him, it's true. But these moments where you're sitting there with Tiger just eating pizza and BSing about the Lakers, when I think of him now, I just shake my head like, that's what I got to do, like he's Tiger Woods. Like, yeah, but he's just a guy, that I was eating a pizza with because I promised him we'd get him a pizza, and we did.
What a great story. I've never heard that. I'm assuming that'll be a chapter in your book if and when you decide to write one.
I think I've given most of this stuff away for free. Everybody I know that's written books, I have a lot of friends in this business that have, and they're like, oh, it's just excruciating, because most of us are used to doing what I do. Like I talk endlessly and then I write, and like I don't have anybody editing me. And I've heard that the process of having your work edited is just it's difficult for some people, and it's just a pain in the butt. So far the answer is no. I'm happy to share them with you, Joe.
I appreciate that. All right, so we're going to fast forward over 20 years at ESPN, doing a bunch of things, including hosting Sports Center, your own show, and then recently taking over for Monday Night Countdown. How big of a deal was that for you to take over Monday Night Countdown?
It was significant because it represented a new thing and a different hill to climb, and I think those are really important. If you and I do that thing where we chat with your students, I think I'll share with them that if they're fortunate enough to have, a long career, that giving themselves different challenges is important. I look back and I realize I did reporting. When I got to ESPN, I did more anchoring again. Then radio became an opportunity to try to tackle. That's an incredibly difficult medium. I arrived very arrogant, thinking it'd be easy to do. Like, I do TV. How hard could this be? Well, so much harder than television, so much harder. And then Sports Center, I've been doing now this is the 9th year, which is amazing that we've done our version of it. And it's a pretty comfortable lane. I know how we do it. No stress. I know what the show is, and it's great fun. I still really enjoy it, which thank God. But then this Monday Night Countdown opportunity, like, that's a totally different animal. You're on site. Not a few Mondays ago, we were in New York, then you go to Vegas and you go to Los Angeles. I mean, you're in the arena quite literally, and there's nothing that can kind of replicate what that energy is like. And it's a harder show to do. It's hard to hear. You're ad-libbing pretty much all of your content. And it's just good. Like, what Reese Davis does on game day, but just blows my mind. I don't know how you do that as smoothly as he does it in an environment where smooth just isn't possible. And, when I'm in these spots now, I think, Joe, wow, it's just the sterile kind of atmosphere that exists in a studio is great for letting you kind of focus and do your job, but it also kind of leads to that, a kind of a sterile whatever. You're out there, there's, however many thousand people are screaming and yelling, it's mayhem. Can you do your job coherently in that setting? So it represented a hill to climb. And, I'm 20 plus years into my time at ESPN. And it's just important to give yourself those hills to climb. Because if you don't, then I think you can become very comfortable in your lane, and then that leads to being complacent, and then that becomes very obvious to your viewer because they're looking at someone that's just kind of, you know, checking the box and doing the show. I don't want to do that. And it's been fun. Greeny said to me, he said, I bet you find that you feel younger and you'll feel energized. And when he went out and did like NBA Countdown and stuff like that, and you know, he offered some insight before I started that I think early on has proven to be very true.
I want to bring it back to Montgomery County. You came back to Montgomery County. You were up in Connecticut working at ESPN. How significant of a move? I know you've talked about it, but how significant of a move was that to come back home for you?
I mean, it's home. Mom's here. You know, my mom's 83 and she's in great health and sharp as, you know, she's the world's youngest 83-year-old woman, but she's 83. And, you know, I lost my pop around the time when you and I met in college. And so that was a long time ago. And so to be close to my mom and her sister, my aunt, and she's a very, very close part of our family as well. They've got a place in Bethany where we've kind of gone ever since like the high school years, and having my kids have an opportunity to make that part of their summertime life, take them to Terps games, baptize them into the way of the Terp. Hopefully that, you know, they become as infected with that kind of Terp DNA that maybe someday they could be that. I mean, whatever they do obviously is fine with me, but it's a powerful pull. And I honestly didn't think I'd ever have that opportunity. But then the way media changed, Joe, with, you know, Mike Greenberg, Stephen A. Smith doing shows in New York, Tony and Mike doing shows in Washington, D.C. I mean, these are some of the biggest shows on our network. And I just asked our president, I said, well, if they do those shows in New York and D.C., I mean, is there any reason why I couldn't just piggyback Tony and Mike and just find a corner of their studio and do this? And he said, I don't see a reason why. I said, cool, let's do it. And I was very grateful that they allowed me to do so. So 2020, we moved back home, and it's just great to, all those things that have always been a part of my life are a part of my life again in a very real way. And it's just fun. It's fun driving around streets. You remember some of them do, you know, some of them like, you know, like, what is it, 200? We needed 200 or 300. What's that road that cuts across from like Olney to like 270? We needed that a long time ago.
200.
Yeah, well, when you drive on it,
The
you're like,
connector.
yes, it's the greatest thing in the world. Like, where was this in '84, man?
Yeah.
Like, we needed this then. But this is what happens when you get old. You get excited by roads. But no, man, it's being home is it's an incredible thing. I didn't dream it would happen.
Any stories about coming home and seeing somebody you hadn't seen, or anything Montgomery County related since you've been back that you want to share?
More than anything, Joe, it's just the familiarity with the place. It's what's cool is driving down a road that maybe you haven't been on in 20-something years, but you just innately know where you are. And it just spurs memories, right? You drive by a field where you played in high school, you know, and you think about that. You remember some greats, you know. There was a guy named Jeff Harris who was in the early to mid 80s, was like a legendary athlete at Rockville. And you drive by and you tell your kids, like, see that school? That's Jeff Harris hit a ball on top of that school. Like, he hit a home run off you? No, not off me. It was off Don Kelsch, who was a way better pitcher than I was. Shout out to Don. Just stuff like that. It's the places that you see that immediately spur a memory that they're dusty, but they're there. And you know, every now and then, like you'll bump into a friend somewhere, and you know, I've been a lot of places, met a lot of people, but it's whether if I know immediately who I'm looking at or not, the second they say whoever it might be, and you're like, of course. And it's cool. You know, these are people whose paths you cross that you wouldn't have otherwise.
We've gone the whole interview without talking about Taylor Swift. I don't know how we haven't. So for those that don't know, the E in ESPN stands for entertainment. Could you explain to people how big of a deal, even if you're not a Swiftie, I don't know if you're a Swiftie, I don't know that I'm a Swiftie, but how big of a deal the Taylor Swift thing is in the NFL right now?
the analogy I made with somebody is that the NFL is the most popular sport in America, but it's like I've met some very wealthy people, and the thing I find about, like, if you're a billionaire and somebody shows you a revenue stream and access to many more millions or billions, you say, sure, I'd like that too. And I think the NFL recognizes that there's no more popular entertainer in the world than Taylor Swift. And so they they have opened their doors and their hearts to the Swifties and saying, hey, if you're interested in watching football, well, here we are. Come check us out. It's wild. I mean, we did a Monday night game a while back in New York, and it was the day after the Sunday night game where she'd been there. And Mike Tirico's a good friend, and I was just asking about that. And we were laughing just that, Sunday Night Football on NBC is the most popular television show in America. But in the same way, same analogy as the billionaire I was just talking about. If you're NBC and you get 20 million people who watched on a typical Sunday, and there's however many million Taylor Swift fans that want to watch just to see what she's doing, well, then you say, hey, welcome. We're doing a football game here. You're most welcome. Hang out if you like. I mean, the NFL just went all in with like their social media and all that. And I know Travis some, and so I wouldn't bother him about how real it is. I just made some jokes with him about what's going on, and I like him a lot. I shouldn't have opened the door here because I'm not going to get into what we've talked about. But I didn't ask him like, so what's going on there? Because it's none of my business. But it's just it has to be wild for him because he's this two-time superstar. I mean, two-time Super Bowl champion, like one of the best players in the league. But to an entirely different lane of people, he's Taylor's boyfriend. Maybe you better be nice to her. You know what I mean? It's just wild. But it's eye-opening, I think, to people that don't understand that. I have a young daughter who went to a Taylor Swift concert, the one in the rain this summer in Foxborough. So believe me, I get it. My daughter knows I know Kelsey, so she'd very much like for me to set up a FaceTime or something, see if we can get her on the phone. I said, sweetheart, I can't. That's not how it works.
Your love for Maryland is unequaled. I don't know anyone. I'm a Terp. I love the Terps, but I don't know anyone who loves the Terps like you do. Where does that come from? And share with us how much you love the Terps.
It's when I was a kid, Joe, my dad, that was a Maryland grad as well. He had season tickets to football and basketball. And I can still remember when they'd show up in like this manila envelope and you'd fold them out and look at them. I'm old. Clearly, there was no internet. Like yesterday, or I should say a while back, Maryland's basketball schedule came out with all this times and this and that. But I mean, the tickets would just show up and you'd look at them. And it was always sort of, I'd look to see what day of the week the Carolina game was. Because I would always hope that it would be on a weekend. But I got to go to one weeknight game a year. And sometimes they'd be late, but like, you just suck it up and go. And then the next day at school, maybe you'd fall asleep at lunch, but so be it. I mean, it was Carolina, you had to go. But I grew up going to those games with my dad. And my dad passed away when I was at the University of Maryland. And I realized that I thought as I got older that it would sort of wane. I thought it would, other things would become more important. But I also didn't realize that what Maryland would represent in so many ways was like this direct path to my dad and the memories of, it was known as Bird Stadium then, and Cole Fieldhouse, obviously in the 70s and the 80s was where Maryland played basketball. And having spent so many nights sitting next to him, seeing incredible moments and all this and that, it just created this love for Maryland athletics with me. And when it came time to go to school, I was looking at all these different places, and I wanted to go to James Madison. I didn't get in, and I was going to go to Ohio University because they have a really good journalism school. And then it was sort of the 11th hour, and I just had this epiphany, and I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, I'm not going to Ohio University. Like I'm a Maryland person. I'm a Terp. It's who I am. And I'm sure Ohio would have been great. As I say, it's a really good school, but it's just, I got to go to Maryland. And thank God we had this really good family friend who was a big deal at Maryland. I'd been accepted there, but I hadn't said I was coming. So they had to kind of finagle it so that I could find a place to be. I stayed in overflow housing in Ellicott Hall, which is the one right across from the football field. And let me tell you, it was and is a dump. Okay. And I was staying in a lounge there my freshman year. But then I got lucky because it was this hall of incredible athletes with guys that we won every intramural thing at Maryland, or like all of them. And these are still friends to this day. So, serendipitous, right? I mean, things have a way of working themselves out, and they certainly did for me in Maryland. And then, that's who I was. That's who I am. And then as I become an adult, and Maryland had that incredible run there, early 2000s, right over your shoulder there, that national championship year, which was when Ralph had the football really cooking. They just wouldn't let me out of their grasp. And now, having kids, I got married later in life, so I've got young kids. And now coming back home, it's, we've gone to lacrosse games and football games and basketball games, and their mom's a Gator, and obviously Florida's got pretty good athletics too. But it's my hope that in the same way my dad just kind of brainwashed me, that I can do the same thing to them. And I'll tell you a sad but maybe funny story. At some point, my daughter was maybe 3 or maybe 4, and we were talking about Florida and we were talking about Maryland. And Lila's my daughter, and I have 2 sons. And she said to me, we were talking about Maryland and Florida. She said, "Well, Mommy, what if I like Florida more than I like Maryland?" And I said, "Well, that's fine, sweetheart." I said, "What if I like your brothers more than I like you?" I said, "Choices have consequences, my love. Choose wisely." I told my 4-year-old daughter this, and here's the thing: don't tell anyone. I meant it. I meant it.
Wow. It is funny how things turn out.
Make good choices. We tell our kids this all the time: make good choices.
All right, last question on Maryland. So is it true that when that schedule comes out for the basketball team, men's basketball team, you look at it, you study it, you circle a few, and you say, "I'll be off this day, this day, this day"?
Yes, essentially. I mean, look, I've been at it long enough that I think what you earn at ESPN over time is I said yes to everything for a long time, and then at some point you earn the right to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to be clear. I'm lucky to have the job I have. I know it. If it's important, like if it's a massive night to be on television to do my show, well, then I'm doing my show.
Sure.
I remember last year when they played Purdue last year, I was like, "Oh, I got to get to that one." I couldn't do it. There was a show I was on. I can't just go in and I don't just tell them when I'll show up, but within reason. Like, for instance, last year, the UCLA game, I thought, that'd really be cool. As it turned out, that was one I could have missed.
That was a disaster.
It was. Maryland got debacled, and I'm sitting there going, if I leave at halftime, maybe I could get back in time to do the show. But I asked. It was like a Tuesday night, and was there anything massively, critically important for me to be on? No. And my bosses are really, really great about that. So yes, it's true, Joe, that I'll go in and I don't just lay my schedule out and say I won't be available. I mean, no one at our place operates that way, and I certainly never would. But within reason, here and there, you cherry pick. Could I theoretically get to this one? Could I get to that one? And they've been great about that. So yes, that is a true story.
Scott, thanks so much for spending time with us. Have a great rest of the NFL season, and go Terps.
Appreciate it, Joe. Anything you need, the answer is always yes. We've been friends a long time, man, and I'm sincerely happy to get a chance to do this with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Joe Yasharoff. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on MoCo's Most Famous. Have a great day, everybody.